Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael and we're going to be getting right back into some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Now, without further ado, let's begin. This story was posted by a user named IntrepidBuy in the AITAH subreddit. The post is titled AITAH for telling my husband that I see him as a liability and not a partner. Sorry for the long post. It's 2 a.m. and I'm crying, tired, and worn out. If I'm rambling, it's because I've held this in for so long, not wanting to burden friends or family with my marital troubles. I, 34F, have been with my husband, 37M, we'll call him Nathan, for 8 years. Ever since our daughter, 3F, was born, I have been unable to trust Nathan with anything, no matter how small. Background context. When I was 19, a semi-truck driver fell asleep at the wheel and turned my car into scrap metal with me inside it. I have enough metal holding me together that I light up like a Christmas tree for TSA and am physically impaired with good days and bad days. I used a portion of my settlement check to buy a house outright and have it retrofitted to accommodate my needs, as I'll eventually require a wheelchair. I work in software development as it's fun and nobody cares if I work from bed on bad days. My husband has not worked in 5 years, which has been fine until our daughter was born. Between the settlement money, a paid-off house, and my salary, I enjoyed having him here with me. He contributed by handling most of the domestic tasks. We pay for a weekly cleaner with monthly deep cleaning because it gave us more time together. Ever since our daughter was born, it was like a light switch turned off in his head. For our daughter, he would buy the wrong size diapers, not fully mixed bottles, put diapers on backwards, leave out poop-covered wipes, and forget to latch cabinets. This past week, he has gone to the store 3 times because he keeps coming home with the wrong size socks and shoes for her. I eventually just ordered the right ones on Amazon. For me, he has tried to help me with my weekly pill organizer fill-up and several times has spilled the contents of new medications all over the floor, then not seeing that he didn't get all of them off the floor. He has repeatedly brought me grapefruit juice to take my medications with a huge no. He has repeatedly forgotten that I can't have dairy and puts milk in my coffee or cheese on a burger. He has broken so many things of mine from being careless. He shattered my laptop because it slipped out of his hand when he tried to pack it for a trip, even after I said I would pack my own electronics. We've lost so many spoons and forks to the disposal. He tried to replace the head gasket in my car and over-torqued the engine bolt, which shattered inside the block, and 2 different shops said they couldn't repair it. We ended up getting a new vehicle because a replacement engine would have cost $11K. A week later, he crashed the new car into the garage door because he thought he'd press the brakes, not the accelerator. He wanted to do TikToks and streaming as a hobby. I supported him initially, but I quickly noticed a pattern. Anything regarding our daughter or me, he was sloppy and careless. He never whoops his own stuff. He would build entire sets to stream or make videos with, leave the garage, and leave his brain in the garage. It came to a head 4 nights ago. He streamed himself building a new set piece for 9 hours straight. Meanwhile, I clocked out early to pick up our daughter from summer camp, cooked and fed both of us, and got her ready for bed. He came out to help put her to bed. I let him know that I needed to get some work done and would be in my office, and I asked him to take the trash out. He said he would. 2 hours later, I left my office and the house felt really warm. He'd taken the trash out, but left our front door partially open and was back in the garage with his game volume really loud. I panicked since our daughter is able to get out of bed and thankfully she was sound asleep. But she could have easily toddled right out of the house and he wouldn't have noticed. Then I noticed a stovetop burner was on with a small pot on it with nothing inside. I didn't use the stove for cooking that night. I popped my head into the garage and said, "Hey, I need you for a minute." I informed him of the door situation and he responded, "I thought I locked it." We checked the camera and no, he did not. I asked about the burner being on and he said he was planning to make ramen and forgot. He pulled the still hot pot off the burner and put it straight into the sink on top of our daughter's favorite plastic plate, which is now ruined. I'll admit I overreacted and screamed, "What are you doing?" He realized what he'd done and pulled the pot off our daughter's plate and straight onto the countertop. I grabbed it quickly and ran it under water to cool it down. I told him I couldn't tonight. I couldn't deal with him. I was taking my meds and going to sleep. He got a cup from the cupboard and set it straight onto the burner that had been on. I hit my limit. I started crying. He kept saying that it was fine, things happen, it's just an accident, he's had a rough day from streaming, he's just tired, why am I crying? It's just a cup, we can replace it. The anger hit and I said, "It's because I have a liability and not a partner." He said, "What the f does that mean? I screamed that it's because I can't trust him to do anything, that I'm always having to watch him like a child, always having to bear the cost of his mistakes, that every time I get careless and think I can trust him to be an adult, I'm always the one getting over. I then said, I can't see you as a partner anymore. You're just another liability in my checkbook. He immediately stormed out of the kitchen and went to bed. I called my mom and told her what happened. She thinks it's just stress and offered to take our daughter for a week so we could figure this out without our daughter seeing it. She says it was an asshole thing to call my husband a liability. In the morning, I told my husband that my mom would pick up our daughter from summer camp and offered to watch her for a week. He said okay, and that's the only interaction we've had since. He spends all day in the garage playing games with his friends, making TikToks, and streaming. For food, he's been ordering DoorDash and having the person deliver it to the garage. It's been days, and he refuses to be in the same room as me. I've tried messaging him to ask if we can talk or figure out a solution, but he's just left me on red. If I pop into the garage, he ignores me but apologizes to his friends or viewers for the interruption and gets unmuted on his mic when the noise stops. Before the blow-up, I'd asked if there was something going on. I tried to gently respond every time he screwed up so our daughter didn't associate mistake with anger. I asked him to schedule with a doctor to see if something was going wrong medically. He always said I was overreacting, people make mistakes, and he didn't see an issue even when the same mistakes kept happening. When I tried to get him to understand that it was concerning just how expensive his mistakes were getting, he'd wave it off as it's not like we can't afford it. I love him dearly. I just missed the person he was before we had a child, the one I could trust and rely on. Did I screw this up forever? I think that OP is justified for blowing up in the way she did. There are some people out there who are genuinely incapable of being responsible or just being an adult. Based on what was shared, OP's husband just seems like a klutz. OP mentioned that the guy wanted to be a streamer or a content creator, and that in itself is totally fine, obviously. But when paired up with OP's description, I get the feeling that this guy is a major man-child. I'm glad that OP actually lashed out. If she didn't, these issues never would have been addressed. However, even after she called out her husband, he just shut down, just like a fucking child. Couples counseling or something is needed here, but based on the man's reaction, I have little faith it will work out. User Listen to Learn said, I'm sorry this is happening and I honestly think something is very, very wrong with your husband. There are several occurrences that can't be seen as mistakes and you are not overreacting. Forgetting a pot on the stove is obviously dangerous, but leaving the door open with a toddler means he doesn't seem to be situationally aware enough to keep his child safe. It's not just the same mistakes over and over again. It's the fact that the consequences are getting worse and worse that can't be minimized and ignored. He really shouldn't be driving anything, nor should your toddler be left alone with him. If he's unwilling to seek medical advice and is deflecting, you may need to consider having him leave your home. He's a walking disaster, literally. NTA. User Always Helpful said he is a walking liability. Deep down, you know you're carrying him and that he doesn't contribute. As your condition deteriorates, this isn't sustainable. You need to find the courage to take action before it's too late. User The Ghost Reborn said, did you screw this up forever? Maybe, but do you actually want it? I can sympathize. A girl I dated for years had her life together in some ways, but in others, she was a total screw up. I couldn't really trust her with tasks, and what made things particularly bad was that her attitude toward messing things up was poor. I had no reason to think she would do better in the future after she'd made another mistake. User Status Pattern said, girl, I will be blunt. He is waiting you out. You know you have a time limit on your mobility and disability. So does he. Once you reach it, he will get worse as you will feel like no one will love you like that and will fall for the sunk cost fallacy, allowing him to continue his mooching ways but worse. Time for him to get a real job. Speak to a lawyer about trying to secure your assets so he can't take them in the event of a divorce, which I'm in favor of, by the way. You will feel a weight lifted off of your shoulders. About a week later, OP provided an update. Sorry for not being so responsive. Thank you to everyone who gave feedback and suggestions and all of the messages. It's been a week. Before I get into the update, I'm going to answer some repeated questions. Why does my husband not work? He can easily find employment, but we both agreed that the pay was never worth the toxic environment of his field unless he wanted to start his own business, which he did not. He worked in home repair and renovation. It was gross how his co-workers spoke of and treated women, female customers, and co-workers alike. He saw many female co-workers be harassed into quitting. He hated how gross it made him feel when sales and adjusters would take advantage of women. Yes, selling inferior and unnecessary services at a premium is a thing. If he said anything, his hours would get cut until he left. He left one job on the first day because his boss left a screaming voicemail for not selling a refrigerant service to a young black couple who didn't even need refrigerant. Yes, he's got documentation and reported multiple employers to the state labor board, and checked back. Nothing was ever done to our knowledge. He's also tried a factory job and a warehouse since leaving the trades. Both heavily penalized him for needing scheduled time off for my medical needs. There's no worker protection here for any of that until FMLA, unpaid, which takes a year to be eligible for. Yes, it is a privilege to walk away from a paying job with your middle fingers held high. I have done the same many times, but am happy where I'm at right now because it's the opposite of toxic. I'm thriving, and our company has a no penalty, unlimited paid sick medical leave policy that is strictly enforced at all levels of management. Any lead who penalizes people for taking leave gets sacked. A unicorn of a company. Add in a child, and short of finding another unicorn employer who won't penalize him for needing time off for me or our daughter, such as when daycare closed for a week due to an RSV outbreak, puts him out of the workforce until either I stop working or our child is old enough to not need consistent monitoring. The last reason for this dynamic is that although I'm disabled, my job pays almost double the highest salary he's ever had, with no reduction in pay for needing time off. It doesn't make financial sense for us to switch who the working partner is. Another question was, does my husband have a large following or make money from streaming and TikTok? No, his streams have an average of 6 viewers, and his Twitch has 3 followers. When we did our taxes, he didn't get a 1099, and he showed me that he'd got all of $6 from TikTok gifts, nothing from Twitch. His viewer counts are about the same as at the end of last year. Some asked, why do we still have a weekly housekeeper and have our daughter in summer camp and part-time daycare? I hate the dynamic of one spouse working a single job for 40 hours a week while the other juggles simultaneous domestic duties, child rearing, and essentially being on call 24/7. I would not want those expectations of me and couldn't fathom putting all of it on someone I love and cherish. If my husband did all of the activities and field trips that daycare did, his evenings and weekends would be taken up by domestic duties that I would physically struggle with assisting. The weekly housekeeper helps prevent deferred cleaning paralysis, where small missed things pile up into unwieldy monster tasks and struggling with where to start. The monthly deep clean and organization has been a world of self-care as we navigated having an infant and the transition from infant to toddler. Edit, our daughter started at the part-time daycare when she turned 3. Before then, my partner was the primary caretaker, which made the weekly housekeeping that much more helpful in not letting things fall into disarray. Some of you also asked about the allowance thing. Yes, I wanted a dynamic where my husband had his own money even if he was not working a paying job. Maybe I've been on social media too long, but I've read so many stories of non-working spouses being financially abused or unable to leave marriages because they did not have access to money they could save up in private. Should I have stopped it sooner when our dynamic became too unbalanced? Yes, I own that. As for what happens if or when we divorce, the house and settlement balance are in a trust completely separated and, as far as my lawyer can tell, out of his reach. Alimony would be up for a judge to decide, but between my documentation that his licenses and certificates aren't expired and my continual medical costs, there's a good chance of not being obligated. Hopefully that answers most or all of the background related questions. On to the update. Friday, I finished work to the smell of food being cooked. My husband was plating dinner on the table when I left my office. He said he wanted to talk over dinner. Some people had given me a heads up that my story was on multiple TikToks, and I'm grateful because it meant being prepared for the possibility he would see it. Which I have feelings about my post being used for content on the very platform my child and I have been neglected for. Not good ones. He did see one. He asked if it was me and I told him the truth. Yes, I wrote it. Yes, that's how I feel. And yes, I read the comments on Reddit, and no, I won't delete or change how I write about him just because I know he can see it. I don't know how to describe his reaction, but he said he'd spent the last day reflecting on just how bad could it be for so many medical diagnosis suggestions to be given as reason and justification. He did say that he's not ADHD. His mom was addicted to opioids and Ritalin when he was a kid, and she tried to get numerous doctors to have him diagnosed ADHD. She had him believing he was, so he also sought out 2 opinions once he was an adult. He didn't learn about her addiction until around 20. He did seek therapy once he was aware that his mom was trying to use him for pills. He said he was willing to see a psychiatrist one more time, but he doesn't think he's ADHD or autistic at all. He does think he might be depressed though. If not depressed, he will ask about some of the other medical suggestions if it will ease my worry or rule out a major problem. He did sound genuine in this, but something he said is sticking with me. He said it jokingly and apologized as soon as he saw the hurt in my eyes. Everyone saying there's something wrong in his brain must be onto something since he chose to love and marry someone medically fragile, knowing our life together would be anything but normal. He did also admit that the night he'd left the door open, the pot on, ruined our child's favorite dish and a cup. He'd drunk a little too much on his stream, and would monitor that more closely. He said the last few nights he had been filling his wine bottle with grape juice, so it looked like he was a jolly drinking Viking but was actually sober. He said he would keep doing that. After dinner, we went out and he surprised me with seeing the new Deadpool movie. We didn't go to our normal theater because he looked up what each theater had for limited edition popcorn buckets. I now have the baby Deadpool one that holds popcorn and a drink. We spent the next day going over the extent of how our family dynamic changed for the worse, how the little things have added up, how I see change as a part of an apology. If you verbally apologize but repeatedly do the same thing, the apology words are worthless to me, and that he didn't recognize just how frequently he was making the same mistakes. Sunday, we spent talking over short and long term. What needs to change immediately, him scheduling his own doctor appointments, timelines for expectations. He agreed that replacing or fixing things he caused will no longer come out of our expense account. He will pay it from his allowance account, which we talked about. I did turn deposits back on, but only for $50 per paycheck. He suggested we keep it that way until he's paid back the cost of repairing the garage and car from earlier this year. He said it would take him far longer to undo the cost of destroying the engine of my last vehicle, but that he's going to step up and find ways to make it right. Just so you know, I see the red flags. Love bombing, not knowing how frequently despite repeated talks. Thinking verbal apologies are the final step in apologizing and not understanding that repeatedly doing the same problem thing is the same as never apologizing. And yes, I know he will read this. Do I actually think this is resolved and we will come out of this as a perfect married couple who stays together until one of us croaks? Not really. Full offense to husband for now. Is it a potential resolution? Maybe. But my husband is fully aware that he has a lot to make up for, a lot to fix, and a tight schedule to make it happen. And that the lesson for our daughter is either going to be taking real accountability can steer a wayward ship back to course. Taking accountability is the right thing to do even if you don't get the result you wanted, or love alone isn't enough. TLDR, this sucks. I suck for letting it get this far. My husband sucks for what he's put us through. Life owes me a dinner date if it's gonna F me so hard. But there's a potential path forward that doesn't involve divorce, and sometimes involves divorce. Edit to add, he finally read the post, so please read between the lines to what I'm actually saying. Last 4 words of the previous 4 paragraphs if it's not obvious. User Zani said, apology popcorn bucket is a new one. I'd be fuming. It just smacks of buy the toddler a snack with a toy to shut her up and distract her. And Googling movie theaters is pretty much the least effort he can do, short of doing nothing at all. Sounds to me like a knee-jerk panic reaction to having his gravy train catered existence with no adult responsibilities about to be cut off. And he calls you medically fragile in spite of the fact you're the primary breadwinner, grew and birthed a child, and manage all the household and childcare responsibilities. That's not fragile, that's totally badass. I mean, I really hope this kick in the ass turns him around into the partner you want, but I'm not holding my breath. User Throwaway Anon said, I'm happy you two were mature enough to sit down repeatedly and talk this through. However, his joke made me so mad and grossed out from here. I'm disabled and that is my literal nightmare scenario. There's always a kernel of truth in jest, so I know for me personally that would eat away at me. You do seem to have your eyes wide open. Know that this is love bombing in early stages. Let's see if he follows through on his doctor appointments and actual long-term changed behavior. Has your husband at all thought that perhaps sitting home in a garage playing video games for 3 to 6 people is contributing to his possible depression? Maybe he should be looking into a part-time job. That would be flexible around time time off as it would only be partial hours. Or perhaps he should look into volunteering outside of the home, since you claim to not need the money. I think your husband needs a purpose to help him get out of the rut he is in, and being outside the house may do that for him. I hope things go your way, but I'm skeptical. I am happy to see you seem to be going into this with your eyes wide open. I wish you the best going forward. User Summerstar said, why doesn't he get off his ass and go to work and actively support the women in the field instead of using that as an excuse not to work? This is such BS. There is a laundry list of red flags. I just can't. User Mary Friendly said, what he said to you was intentionally hurtful. The fact that he said it and then tried to apologize for it makes me want to punch him right in the dick. He knew it would hurt and he said it anyway, because he's mad about you calling him on his shit. He's leeched off you for years and still thinks he's the higher value party in your marriage because he's physically whole. Fuck that and fuck him. Only not really, because why would you reward the bastard? I try not to jump on the divorce immediately bandwagon, but this motherfucker neither appreciates nor respects you. You've bankrolled his whole goddamn life, and he thinks it's okay to treat you as less than. I hope he reads this. I really do.